In the introduction of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill tells a great story. It's a legendary story, and I want to go over this story with you right now. The story is called 3 Feet from Gold, and you may have heard it before, but let's dive into what he says. Napoleon Hill says here in the book, one of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when being overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. So to illustrate that, he tells this great story, and it's a story about a man named R.U. Darby. R.U. Darby. And he says, an uncle of R.U. Darby was caught with gold fever. Now remember, at the time this was written, that was very real. And he was caught by gold fever in the gold rush days and went to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than have been taken from the earth. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite. He goes on to say that after weeks of labor, they were rewarded by finding some gold, and they got very excited about that. And so they brought all of this machinery to this oring site, so that they could actually really mine it further and see how much gold was available. So he hid his site, went back to his home in Maryland, raised all this money from his family, said, you're going to all get rich if you give me money so I can get even more machinery and we can find the gold that I have found and is now hidden. So he goes and he gets the money, and it says here, they bought all the needed machinery, they shipped it back to where the oring site was, and the uncle and Darby went back to work the mine. The first car of ore was mined, and it shipped it to a smelter. The returns proved they had one of the richest mines in all of Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear up all of their debts. Then would come the big killing and profits. Down went the drills, up went their hopes. But a funny thing happened, he goes on in the story to say, they kept going, and all of a sudden there was no more gold. The vein of gold ore had disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperate at this point, trying to find some gold. But they didn't find any. Finally, Napoleon Hill says, they decided to quit. So they wanted to at least get something out of this. So they sold their machinery to a junk man who bought the site and the machinery for just a few $100s. And then they took the train back home. But this junk man was not any ordinary junk man. This was a junk man that had a vision. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine, do calculations. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where Darby and his uncle had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars of gold from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. What's so great about that story is it reminds us that oftentimes we stop after we've put in all of this time and effort toward the very thing that it is that we want, and we stop right before it is that life brings it to us. Where in your life have you stopped 3 feet from gold in the past, and you look back and think, I wished I had followed through, or if I had followed through just a little bit longer, if I had persisted just a little bit longer, I might have actually yielded the gold from that experience or from my efforts. Remind yourself this as you go through the Think and Grow Rich journey, not to let yourself stop just 3 feet from the gold that life wants you to have.